If there's one thing we've learned about business and life, it's that people are the X factor. They constantly surprise us, both in amazing ways and not so much. We're Ben and Syya, and welcome to the On This Business Bites podcast. This show is all about real life things we all deal with every day, how they relate to business, and how to make some sense out of our daily chaos. Welcome to the show. And welcome back to another episode of On This Business Bites. I'm Ben, and this is Syya. Now, most people talk about management, and they talk about managing down. You have some people you're responsible for. You have a team, you have a division, whatever it is, and your responsibility is to make sure that those people are taken care of. And I applaud that. The challenge is, in today's world, managing down is not enough. I talk about 360-degree leadership because there's people that you have to manage above you, making sure that your boss is taken care of, making sure that your boss's boss is taken care of, and making sure that you are aligned with their expectations, their goals, their needs, their wants, their desires, and also the teams around you. Because just because you're in marketing doesn't mean you can ignore ops, doesn't mean you can ignore sales, doesn't mean you can ignore legal. They all have their part to play to make the company work. And your team engages and interacts with them either deliberately or not. And you have to make sure that you understand not only what they need and help them succeed on their level, but enabling them to help you succeed on your level. And that's how 360-degree leadership works. It's being able to understand that you're not just talking about this is my area of expertise. This is it. I exist in a bubble. None of us exist in a bubble. We all work for one goal, and that's the success of the company, and that is the success of the customer. Because if the customer doesn't feel listened to, understood, valued, and that they have a complete experience through the entire interaction with the company goes under. So Syya, let's know on this.
That is like the definition of, when you hear people saying like, do you see the forest from the trees? Mm-hmm. Right. And that whole 360, and I don't know why my brain, I'm like 365. I think 365 days a year. That's what's
there we go.
Just so you know what my brain was thinking while you were talking there.
Well, those extra 5 degrees, 5 degrees of separation. Oh, actually, that's 6 degrees of separation. But we're close.
We're going to make it work. So 100%, I think we are so focused on what our goals are, what we're told to do, that we start functioning in silos. I know for a fact, working for a large corporate entity, the divisions worked in their own best interest, serving their purpose because that's ultimately what they got paid on, what they were goaled towards for their metrics of success. As a leader in general, you do understand what you're doing does have like blood in a body. What you're doing in one place affects the other areas, right?
The blood doesn't just stay in the heart.
No, it goes everywhere, right?
Everywhere?
Everywhere. So, I think here's what I think the challenge is, right? Is ultimately we are coin-operated individuals. And I guess as a leader, it is the challenge that maybe I'm speaking personally. I had a 365-degree view. I love that 365. Everyone, do 365.
Go live with it. Just live with it.
And, oh my gosh, could you imagine like a dance instructor like, hey, everyone, 365, and the dancers are like, off by 5 degrees every time. Sorry, I'm having a day. Anyway, so the problem I think leadership has for 365 degree leadership is if you are responsible for something, but the people that you're trying to rally around and you're trying to make considerations for, if they don't have any assumption of connection to you in your line of business or whatever it is that you do, it's harder to get them on board. It's
Absolutely.
harder to get them to win. So let me ask you this because I think we are on the same page 100%. I think everybody watching and listening understands 360, 5 degrees of the view of it. But how do you suggest, Ben? Because it's easier said than done, people. Like,
It truly is. I mean, I see this all the time. I mean, what keeps the silos happening is competing budgets, competing fiefdoms, hierarchy, compensation packages. There's a million things that keep us from talking to each other within the company. you know, and because we don't talk with these companies, three different divisions could be working on a similar project and not have a clue what's going on. So you're spending three times the budget on something that you could have spent money on once.
oh,
It is up to leaders to get out of their own ego way and to sit there and say, my job is not to manage for my own self-importance. My job is to sit there and say, how do I enable my team to succeed? And your team succeeds when you are aligned with other people's teams. When you can sit there and say, look, we need finance on board. We need HR on board. We need legal on board. We need marketing or sales on board to be able to take this project and be able to launch it and watch it run. That's life. No project. We consider this our baby. We built this and that thing. But guess what? The other divisions are going to touch it one way, shape, or form before it hits human beings outside of the company. In order to be able to do that, you need to make sure that you're looking at and listening to opinions that are outside your groupthink. And a great leader sits there and goes, wait a second here. We need to create cross-pollination teams. We need to sit there and say, we need to get a scrum going here with legal, finance, marketing, sales, and ops all together to whiteboard this thing to say, hey, listen, this is where we are so far.
yeah.
Where do you guys see that this could go wrong in terms of launch or implementation or, any backlash that could come out of this? How do we make this better? And when you can be the leader who can do that, who can sit there and put my fiefdom and my ego and my budget aside and sit there and say, wait a second here, we're not going to succeed unless everybody succeeds. The dynamic changes. And that takes time, it takes effort, it takes a lot of conversations. It takes, going out for coffees, it takes going out for lunches. It's a lot of, figuring out what are the hot points and what are the frustration points of the other divisions. How does this fit in with the other competing things you're working on? I mean, you and I have talked about different divisions having competing products, with the, and everything that goes on that. And how do these projects work together to be able to enable both of them to succeed? Because they're probably going after different markets. And the thing is sit there and say, okay, how do we step these things in a way that they're going to be able to for both of these things to be successful? That takes stepping out of your own comfort zone and sitting there going, we is better than me. And that takes a different type of leader. And it's not, you can only start the conversation. You need to have other leaders that sit there and say, wait a second here, this collaboration is in our best interest as well. And I think it takes time, it takes effort, it's going to take some missteps, it's going to take some miscommunication, it's going to take, sometimes some face-to-face, voices being raised. But you know what? In the end, it makes for a better company and better products and better services.
I think a lot of that, again, taking that ego out factor, I think is really interesting because at the end of the day, maybe because I am coin operated, is ego is one thing, especially if you're looking to do like a growth in the ladder of career of
Yes.
leadership, right? And gain more quote power. But at the end of the day, I think it's ultimately if you can make their life easier to A, help them hit their goals, or B, make them their money faster, easier,
Yes.
quicker, right? I think you're going to get endorsement and support. I think here's where I look at some of the willingness of some leaders more than others. Do you think it is still a top down, meaning the CEO really sets the tone to support a 365?
I think culture comes either bottom up or top down, and I think it's a combination of the two.
Okay.
If you have a set of leadership that is basically putting everybody in their own corner and says, "Okay, everybody come out fists up," you're never going to get collaboration. And that fists up can be how budgets are distributed, how funds are allocated, how commissions are created, hierarchy in terms of promotions, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of things within a company culture that can keep divisions from talking nice and playing nice with each other. And the opposite is true too. The culture has to be there, but as soon as there is competing wants, needs, and desires, you have problems. Here's a perfect example. And this is going back almost 30 years. I used to work for Kinko's Corporate, and
Mm.
I was in charge of Western Canada on the sales side. And once a year, they brought 800 sales guys and 800 ops guys down to some conference. This year, it happened to be in Vegas. And for 3 or 4 days of meetings and this, that, their thing, and some of the meetings were together and some of the meetings were separate. Well, we had 800 sales guys in one room and 800 ops guys in the other room. And we're listening to it, and we're says sell on value, and the talking about the customer and all the things that you hear at a sales meeting. Wonderful, great things like that. I got up, I went to the bathroom, I went, you know what? I'm just going to step into the ops meeting just for curiosity. You need to grind these people. You need to, it was completely, absolutely the complete opposite. And you wondered why the ops guys hated the sales guys and the sales guys hated the ops. We were budgeted differently. We were compensated differently. Our priorities within running the business were different. And you wondered why there was such a cultural disconnect between sales and operations. Didn't matter if you were in Billings, Montana, Los Angeles, New York, or Vancouver. You could tell that there was this animosity between the organization, the two parts of the organization. And that came down to how people were compensated
Yep.
and what their leadership thought was important. And if there isn't that sense of, doesn't have to be kumbaya, but there has to be a sense of mutual goal setting coming from the top. If it's not there, it's very difficult for anybody to sit there and go, look, I may be a small cog in a very big wheel, but I want to have 360 leadership within my sphere of influence. You can only do that to some degree and some level, and you can only fight City Hall for so long.
Dude, let me tell you, man. I had a colleague who only had two accounts,
Hmm.
and my account was one. And by the way, I had one account at that time, but this individual had two accounts, and that other account that they had comprised of 90% of their number of their quota, and my account was like 10%. Can I just tell you how difficult it can be when, yeah, I mean, technically this account is their account, but they represent so little of what they actually get compensated on. It really
Absolutely.
takes so how would you suggest for others? And by the way, those like commenting, please, 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 because this is like it's almost like parenthood, right?
Yeah.
You got a teenage kid who 90% of their time they're on their phones chatting it up with their friends. How do you get that 10% of interest to be like, you need to clean up the house? Like you have chores?
Yeah.
Like how would you what did you do with your
Uh,
children? Let's not talk about business. How did you get your kids motivated to be like, chop
well,
chop?
I mean, for my son, it was we led by example. We led by example. I mean, there was, I forget what it was. I don't think it was Barney. It was one of the things. It was the cleanup song, and it was just like sitting there going, "Look, you want to play with your toys? Cool. You can play with any toy you want. You can play with them all day long. But at the end of the day, they get cleaned up and they get put away there." And it was an understanding that we would help. because they were small. And as they got bigger, their responsibility was to put away the toys, not ours. And it was their sense, and it was giving them limited sense of responsibility and sense of self actualization to sit there and say, look, we're a family. We, everybody's got their part. Mom does the cooking. Dad cleans up after dinner. Dad takes out the garbage. Mom vacuums the house. Whatever. This is your part. And I think a lot of it came down to that. It came down through being able to set expectations because Robbie saw how we acted as parents.
Mm.
And we basically lived our life in a way that showed people that, hey, wait a second here. This is what's important. And I think that we need to do this within our personal lives, within business, whatever we need to emulate what we want to see in the world. If we don't emulate what we want to see in the world, we're never going to get it. Like, I can't boil the ocean. There's no way I can boil the ocean. But what I can do, and this podcast is part of it, is that I can influence my little corner of it.
Right.
And that's what I do every day with the conversations that we have here, with conversations I have with other people, is I emulate both in thought and action what I want to see happen in the world.
Oh, and dude, that is what is, I think that desire, that can do attitude, if you want to call it that. I I don't know if we like say it enough and execute it enough, right? I think a lot of people want it to happen. So so if I'm hearing you correctly, then you're saying like, okay, lead by example is the way in a lot of ways. It's like, look, you can't just dictate orders. You got to be in the ship with us, rowing that boat, right? Um, okay, so let me ask you this. So we've got that we're getting our peer groups to work with each other and,
Mm-hmm.
subordinates are on board. How would you go with the muckety mucks, the higher ups that are like in that ivory tower? They're looking at spreadsheets. They don't necessarily see the battlefield.
Yeah, I mean, this is another conversation. We need to land the ship sooner, land the ship sooner or later. But I think that what you can do is with upper management is understand what are they trying to achieve. What are their frustrations? What are their hot points? What are their goals? What are their aspirations? Either whether with their division or whether it's it, and sit there and say, well, what if we did this? What if we did this? I noticed that this, and this are important to you. What if we tried this in a limited scope and we tried this to see how that worked in order to be able to achieve your goal? And you're right. It's being coin operated. It's what's in it for me. And it doesn't matter if it's an individual, whether it's a boss, whatever. Each one of us have our selfish points of view. We want what we want when we want it. And if we can help people succeed at their level, whether it's helping them get the promotion that they want, whether it's helping them get the bonus that they want, whether it's helping them get a bigger piece of the budget that they want, and being able to do it in a way that changes the paradigm and shows them that, instead of doing it the way you've always done it, why don't we try this and see if that works? And those are conversations. That's building trust. That's trust you have to build over a period of time because you have to be seen as the person who gets stuff done. If you're the person who they see get stuff done, you're going to be the one that they're going to listen to. If you're the person who their division is hell in a handbasket, they're not going to listen to you. But if you're the person that sits there and says, look, Ben gets stuff done in his division. His division is elevated beyond all the other divisions. He's more profitable. They're more efficient. They have less turnover. Blah 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 blah. Wait a second here. Maybe his opinion has some value.
I'm right there with you, man. I don't want to keep going on because I know I can keep going because I think this is like one of those. Well, look, I think people make a career based off just simply this. I mean, Ben,
Absolutely.
you're a bad, what with it. So, I'm gonna go ahead and say yes, and I'd like to talk more about this because I had some imagery pop up when you talked, and I'm like, we're gonna keep going down this like rabbit hole, and I know you're trying to land the plane, so
You know what? This has been a little bit longer, but that's okay. Sometimes there's subjects that take a little bit more time and need to be chewed on a little bit more. And I think this is one of them. And I think this is one we could chew on again.
No, you
But
mean.
yeah, we can gnaw on it. We can gnaw on this. We can chew on this. We can bite on it. We can do everything with it. But I think that this is one of those topics that, you know, there is always a better way. There's always a different way. And I think we need to sit there, look at it and sit there and say, what do we want to see in the world? Emulate it, live it, be it, and you have a better chance of that happening. So with that, I'm Ben.
I'm
This
Sia.
cough, this cough monster is Sia, and we'll see you soon.
Hey, hey, hey. Thanks for listening to another episode of Not On This Business Bites. If you liked what you heard, we most humbly ask that you like, share, and hit that subscribe button. If you want to communicate more effectively within your organization, contact Ben at IamBenBaker.com or me at BrilliantBeeMedia.com. We can help you build your community, brand awareness, and personality through digital content and podcasting. We cannot wait to hear from you. See you next week for another episode of Not On This Business Bites.